evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a special guest with us. We have Chris Reifert of Autopsy. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Well, thank you so much, and you even pronounced my name correctly.
Oh, good. I was a little scared.
One of the few, so thank you.
Yay! Okay, Chris, let's go way, way back in time, okay? When you
I feel old already.
Yeah, I know. Well, don't worry, I'm just as old as you are, so it's all cool.
Well, that's yet to be seen as well.
All right, well, one of these days you'll see. So, okay, look, you formed this band. Listen, Chris, pay attention here now.
Okay.
Okay, so you formed this band, you did it out there on the West Coast, but prior to this, you were in a little band called Death as their drummer. Tell us about that.
Well, that's a pretty broad subject. What do you want to know?
I want to know, how did you hook up with them? I mean, how did you meet Chuck and end up being the drummer at the beginning of Death?
Well, them being the two of us. Well, Chuck, as it's widely known, had already been through several lineups of the band and was kind of ready to start fresh, and that's where I came into the picture. Fortunately for me, right place, right time, that kind of thing. I had a friend of mine who worked for a little local radio station in the area over here, and one day she came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm about to run this ad for someone named Chuck who's looking for members for a band called Death. Is that something you're interested in?" And I was kind of in shock because I'd already not only known about the band, but I was a fan of the band, had been collecting the demos, so I was already really familiar with what it was about and the songs and all that good stuff. So I said, "Hell yeah, give me that fucking phone number. I'm going to call it today," which I did. I'm sure I called it as soon as I got home, and Chuck himself answered the phone, and we started talking and pretty much hit it off right away. I was a little bit nervous because I had just turned 17 at the time, and so I'm like, well, what's he going to think about this dumb kid hitting him up and bugging him, and I didn't know he was only 19, I had no idea, and so, I told him, like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm 17, is that a big deal?" He's like, "Nope." So, so that was kind of a relief, and then we talked about music, I'm pretty sure he asked what I was into, and I was ready to impress. So I'm like, "Yeah, I like Bathory and Artillery and Sodom and, all the cool stuff that I was listening to at the time." And, he said, like, "Oh, what about, like, Possessed and Slayer?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." So I was very familiar with those bands. I'd seen them live multiple times, et cetera, et cetera. And we got together over at the house he was living in and talked some more, and I said, "Hey, yeah, I know how to play metal, and I could play fast," and I played him, a couple of songs, some stuff I played on, with the previous band, and he seemed impressed enough to not kick me out of the house, which was a positive achievement, and I remember him playing me on guitar the riffs for the song Scream Bloody Gore, and here's what I'm doing now, and of course I was amazed. And that was pretty much it. I think I was literally like the only person that answered his ad. So it's a far cry from today where people would be climbing over each other and just trying to kill themselves, to get an opportunity like that. But I was the only one. And there you go. There was no official tryout or anything. We just got along, which I guess carried some weight, and we started jamming. And there was never a time where I'm like, "Hey, am I in the band?" It just kind of sort of happened, which was really cool.
That is really cool. And then what? Chuck moved back to Florida, and you didn't want to go down to that flat state down there?
Well, that was after recording the album and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, he was kind of a vagabond at the time, he'd sort of been back and forth between California and Florida and Canada and that sort of thing. And by the time we recorded the album, he decided he wanted to, resettle in Florida. And it was cool because I did get the invitation, like, "Hey, if you want to stay in the band, come on down here and keep going, and that was cool to hear, because I was bummed, because it was all, coming to an end, but at the same time, I didn't want to uproot myself and move away from everything I know and love here in California, so I said, dude, thank you so much, it's been great, we'll keep in touch, of course, which we did, but I'm going to stay here and kind of do my thing.
And your thing was Autopsy.
It was, yeah. It turns out, yeah. I mean, it was either that or sit around and twiddle my thumbs and figure out what to do. So I did have a brief stint with a band called Desecration over here, who was another band that I'd looked up to and collected their demos, and I filled in for them until they split up. So that was another little cool side note that not a lot of people know about, but, next thing you know, Eric Cutler and I started talking about forming our own band. That did turn out to be Autopsy.
And when you were forming Autopsy, what were you going for? I mean, were you like, hey, we want to be a big thrash band, or we want to be a doomy band? What were you going for way back when?
We just wanted to play death metal, I mean, we didn't have any aspirations to be like the coolest band on the planet, or be like a big chart-busting group or anything like that. We just said, hey, let's, we both like, brutal music, and figured we'd, give it a shot and see what happened.
And then now, Autopsy has been such an influence on all these other bands now. I mean, here you guys are, we're just going to play music now. There goes Chuck. I got nothing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally it. I mean, there was a few months where I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with my life, after death? And, I did the Desecration thing, and it was just basically filling in with them, but there was a minute where I had no clue as to what I was going to do, but it was only for a minute, fortunately. And as soon as I got the verification that Chuck was going to remain in Florida and not just visit, then it was like, okay, the gate is open, and I can start something new and actually commit to it. And so that's what happened.
And it's kind of cool because, like I said, you guys way back in the day, you formed your little band Autopsy there, and it's been a huge influence on everybody, but, is it a huge influence because you were one of the first ones, do you think, or just because you were so fucking awesome that everybody wanted to be like you?
Oh, you're way too kind, first of all. I mean, it's just death metal, it's just rock and roll at the end of the day. But, what, realistically, I just feel like we're sort of passing on Eli. Like Keith Richards said, even about the Rolling Stones, we're just passing it on. They had their influences. We're kind of doing their own thing with it, and, and it's the same with us. I mean, we just are sort of passing on what we liked, all the bands that we enjoyed. We tried to incorporate that into our music, but yet have like our own sound and style or whatever. And that's pretty much it. It's like just packing up all the things that we liked into our music, and just, music is kind of just a continuous stream. It all sort of like blurs together, and I'm happy to be a part of that blur.
So, Chris, was drums like the first instrument you ever played? Was there anything before that?
No, it was drums. I mean, going back to, it's all because of my parents. So honestly, even when I was like super little, like they would sit me down with like pots and pans and wooden spoons, and that was like my first drum kit. They're like, here, make noise on these, probably just to keep me occupied so they can, go do what they wanted to do or whatever. But it really goes back that far. And then they ended up putting me in marching band when I was probably about 9, and I played bass drum. But I really wanted to play a drum kit. That was like the elusive, ring to grasp for. And it was a kind of a all too slow progression in my mind. I got like a drum pad, so I could practice like rudiments and stuff. And then I got an actual snare drum, no kit, a snare drum, which I believe was a hand-me-down from my grandfather because he was a musician. And finally, I talked my parents into a drum kit, which I got for $65 at the flea market. My dad talked the guy down from $100 down to $65, and it was like sparkly orange, mix and match kit, all different brands comprising this kit, with one little tiny cymbal that stuck out of the bass drum on this weird little stand. But that was a drum kit, so I was ready for the races.
Oh, you must have been so happy. How old were you?
When I got the kit, probably like 12, I guess.
Oh, man.
Something like that, you know. I mean, it was like the 70s when I started, you know, with the marching band and all that. And but again, the eye on the prize, the drum kit. So, yeah, I was super stoked. I wanted to play drum rolls and shit before I could play beats. I want to do the fun stuff, you know. And I took lessons for a few months, and the guy who was actually a high school student that my parents found, he was, you know, advertising drum lessons or whatever. He's like, nah, you're going to learn how to play a rhythm first, then we'll get to the fun stuff. But the funny thing was, he moved away before we got to the fun stuff.
Oh.
I got to learn rhythms and all that, but it kind of made me figure out how to do rolls and things like that on my own. I had no instruction for that stuff, and that was fun. It's like, okay, you know, so the sky's the limit here. So, but that's what I always wanted to do, was do the really exciting stuff and not just, you know, play a rhythm or whatever.
And what about this singing thing that you got going on there, Chris? Were you always singing along with the songs while you were playing drums anyways?
No, I never wanted to do that. That was the last thing on my mind. I just wanted to jam, you know, but as it's been told before, I kind of got stuck with it. It's one of those things. When we started Autopsy, we wanted to find a vocalist, you know. That was our intention, have like a front person singing, and we tried out a friend, and it went terribly, and we said, nah, this isn't working. And Eric and I said, okay, well, no one else is around to do this, so let's just both do it, you know. And he ended up singing like one of the songs, but he kind of lost interest in the vocals part and wanted to just, you know, play guitar. So that left me to just pick up the pieces and just do it. So it was, you know, it was not a goal of mine, trust me.
Well, it's interesting. Whenever I see the drummers singing, I'm like, how the fuck do they do that when they're trying to play drums and they're trying to get their face over by the microphone so they can do that too? It's just so much.
It's, well, you know, when there's no options, you got to find a way to make it happen, and that's what the boat that we're in. It's like, well, it's either going to happen or we're not going to have a vocalist.
You're going to be an instrumental band.
Exactly, yeah. We didn't want to be an instrumental band, so there had to be a way to make it work, and we made it work.
So what you should do, Chris, then, is you should have the riser out in front and all the guitar players in the back. Because you're the...
I'm not down for that. I'm not down for that either. I'm there. That's good enough, you know, and I have a good view of everything, so it's all good. You know?
Well, being the vocalist, you're never really in the back in the dark anymore like most of the drummers are.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Everyone plays their part, and the cool thing is, it you know, since we don't have a front person up front running around and high-fiving people and all that kind of stuff, we have to keep it exciting, and Eric and Danny and Joe are really good about that. They're out there running around and crashing into each other and picking the guitar necks and people's faces, and you know all that stuff. So it worked out really good, and they're really great about keeping it entertaining. You know, with me sitting in the back yelling and screaming and gurgling and all that. So no complaints. But you know, and it's kind of unique too.
It is.
It's kind of a bonus.
It is. It's kind of fun. So here you guys are having this grand old time, Chris, and then what the frick happened? What? You guys, what'd you get? Sick of it? You got the 7-year itch?
Oh, are you talking about the split up of the band?
I'm talking about the split up. We're at 1995-ish now.
Yeah, 93 to be, I hate to be Mr. Corrector.
No, that's okay.
We went on a horrible U.S. tour in 93. It was like, I'm not sure how long, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 months long. And the problem was the person that organized it did not know or care what they were doing. We started off in New York, so we had to drive all the way across the country just to get to our first show.
Oof.
And then we were like zigzagging everywhere in this weird, nonsensical way. And we'd have days off at weird times, so we weren't making money for gas or anything, and a lot of the places wouldn't even pay us what we were guaranteed, and it was really stressful, and it just really destroyed the band, you know, like, it wasn't even halfway through the tour, we knew it was over, we're like, okay, this sucks, it's not fun, this is not healthy.
No.
You know, I mean, for my part, the only way to survive was just to stay drunk, like, all day, every day, and eat, like, cold Chef Boyardee right out of the can, you know, and that was literally the whole tour. You know, that was for me, my coping mechanism. You know, everyone probably has their own story, but it was just horrible. I mean, there was good times, don't get me wrong. We had some good shows, and definitely, like, the non-show times, like, farting around the towns we're in, there was definitely some fun going on, so it wasn't all terrible, but it was not healthy for the band. And we got home, and we had a really brief talk. It was, you know, probably like 5 minutes, saying, "Hey, is this working?" Nope. Okay, let's call it a day. But we didn't want to go out with a whimper and, like, crawl away with our tails between our legs, so we had some new material built up, which we'd already been playing live. And we thought, well, let's, you know, if we're going to put an end to this, let's go out strong. And so, you know, we figured let's record a final album and do, like, a farewell show in the area for all of our friends and all that. And I'm so glad we did that, you know. It was just, like, the ultimate way to go out, you know. Just go out with our heads and middle fingers held high and call it a successful adventure and move along with our lives.
And then you moved along to another band.
Yes.
Abscess.
Yeah.
Got your punk on.
Yeah, that was a crazy... that band was a wild ride. It actually started before Autopsy was done, because we had a time between the tour and the new and final Autopsy album, and we'd already started Abscess in the meantime, so we were kind of doing 2 bands for a minute there, and then once we fulfilled our Autopsy obligations, it was just Abscess all the way for like 15 years. It was fucking crazy, let me tell you. I can definitely write a book just about Abscess. It was it was not healthy, but in a fun way.
Well, maybe you should.
Maybe someday. I don't know. That's taking some time away from working on future projects.
In your twilight years, you could write that book.
Yeah, we'll see if I make it that far.
Okay, so when and why did you decide to get Autopsy back together?
Basically, well, Severed Survival reached its 20th anniversary, and our label Peaceville wanted to make a to-do out of it, you know, like, hey, let's reissue the album and, you know, make it cool and all that, which we were definitely all for. I mean, all those years Autopsy was broken up, there were still, like, reissues and things like that going on, so it was never really dead in that way.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, we basically created children together, which are these albums, and they don't go away. You know, once you give birth to them, they're on the planet until the end of time, basically, in one form or another. So there's always, you know, reissues and things like that going on. So we remained in touch with each other and stayed friends through the whole thing, you know, even despite all the trials and tribulations, we were never not friends. So anyways, the anniversary of Severed Survival comes around, and we had this idea, like, hey, 20 years, that's kind of a milestone. Let's make it an extra special treat and record a few more Autopsy songs just for this. Just, you know, for the fans that sort of put us where we were or whatever. And we did that. And it came out really cool, and it was fun and a good time. And, you know, all the same, we're like, okay, cool, we did that. Let's move on, you know, with no further plans or anything like that. And it kind of triggered something with other people, not even so much us, but in particular the guys who run Maryland Death Fest. And we had worked with them a couple of times with Abscess, so we were familiar and, you know, knew they were trustworthy and all that good stuff. But they started, you know, honestly really hounding us about Autopsy, like, hey, let them out an Autopsy reunion. And we're like, hey, no. And it went back and forth for a while. They just, like, would not let up, you know, and we finally buckled and said, okay, you know, fine, you're obviously not going to take no for an answer. Let's do it. You know, and so I do have to give them a lot of credit for that, because a lot of people tried to make that happen. We had no problem saying no for 15 years. We just said no. And then we finally said yes to these guys. And it was only supposed to be one show. We're like, okay, let's play this show, and they're going to pay us well, and it'll be fun, and hopefully people like us and all that. And it triggered something else, and like other people started saying, oh, well, they got Autopsy, why can't we? And so we took on a couple more shows, and that was Party Song in Germany, which was crazy because we ended up headlining for 10,000 people. We're used to playing for 10 people. Now it's 10,000. Literally, we played for 10 people and 10,000. And then Hole in the Sky in Bergen, Norway. So we took those on, and once again, like, okay, well, we're still doing Abscess, and, we'll do these 3 shows and call it done. But Clint, the guitar player / vocalist for Abscess, at that point, he'd had enough and said, okay, I'm done, that's it. So we said, okay, Abscess is done, unfortunately, because that was fun, but now the door is open to just do Autopsy, because that's fun also. So it's like, all right, well, we've gone this far, let's record some new stuff. We're getting ideas for riffs and that, and it was just kind of full force from there on out. That's the way this band has always been. We, sort of have an idea to do one thing, and it turns into something else, and then that turns into something else.
And now you're adults, too.
Yeah, I know. That's weird. You wouldn't know it by listening to what we do, but yes, we are.
So here we are at the end of 2015, and you guys got all kinds of stuff going on. Now, you just released the EP Skull Grinder. I was just listening to that, actually.
Let's call it an album, just to
okay, because it kind of is. I'm like, it's the longest EP ever, but it's shopped as an EP.
Well, that's something that the label insisted on, is calling it that, but we never wanted to call it that. So we sort of said, okay, we'll call it that until it comes out, and then we're going to say, here's our new album.
Okay, well then, you got this new album out, Skull Grinder, on Peaceful Records. Well, it is an album. There's 7 tracks on it? That's big.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. Rain and Blood, Slayer, one of the best metal albums of all time, is, 27 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
Merciful Fate, Melissa, which is also one of the best metal albums of all time. 7 songs, right?
Yes. That's what I thought. It was kind of weird, too, when I read it. I was like, that's an EP is 2 songs or 4 or
the
something.
math. Well, nowadays, as soon as CDs started becoming popular, and you've got 80 minutes you can fill up, basically, I've literally seen releases that are 30, 40 minutes long, and bands are calling it an EP or mini LP, which is ridiculous.
It's an album. The end.
That's the times we live in. So, ultimately, call it what you want. You can call it an EP, you can call it a mini LP, you can call it an album. We call it an album.
Well, then I'm calling it one, too.
Yeah, don't call it boring. That's all we ask.
Oh, it's certainly not boring. And when you guys recorded this one, right, were you going for a certain sound, or did you just have a bunch of stuff written and let's get this shit out there?
It's just more songs. That's the way we always do it. We don't really shoot for anything except sounding like ourselves. So that's pretty much it. I mean, if you go back to the first demo up to now, there's not been a lot of changes, really. I mean, sometimes we expand on things a little bit, add some cool nuances here and there that we may not have thought of when we were 18. But as far as the general vibe and all that, we've tried to keep that intact.
Oh, it sounds great. Very old school. I hate using that term, but kind of old schoolish death metal, but with, newer technology or whatever you want to say, so it's got that clearer sound to it. I loved it. And now, did you record it locally? I mean, do you go with the same place every time, or what?
We do, yeah. I mean, we discovered this. Well, I mean, that's a whole other story on its own. But all the Chapter 2 Autopsy stuff has been done at Fantasy Studios, and that's here in Berkeley. It's just, a 20-minute drive from my house, so that's nice and easy. It's a really cool place, really nice. I mean, it's got such a rich history. If you look it up, you'll see what I mean. But that's where we've done all the new Autopsy stuff, and we've always worked with Adam Munoz, who's our diehard, trusty engineer. There's no need to look around for anywhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the place.
Okay, so next month, January 8th, you have this box set coming out called After the Cutting. So tell us all the goodies in this set. There's so much shit going on. What is all in this box set, Chris?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still kind of blown away by it. We just copies 2 days ago, which was torturous because the people that pre-ordered it got their copies first, even before us. So we're seeing all these things online and, phone calls and text message pictures and everything. Go, hey, look at this. It's so cool. And we're like, great. I can't wait to get one. I fucking played on it, But so anyway, that's another story. So we had to wait a long time to get our actual copies, but we finally got them, and I can't believe it's our band. I mean, it's fucking insane. This is like the kind of stuff that like Kiss and Alice Cooper should be putting out. This magnitude of awesomeness. I'm pretty much blown away. I gotta say, and this is not a sales pitch or anything like that. I just looked at it like, oh my God, this is us. What? Who in their right mind would put our band into this kind of format? This is berserk. But yeah, it's 4 discs. It's I think 83 songs, like 5 hours. I mean, I don't know who has time in their life to listen to all that, but if you do, then cool. Yeah, and this 92-page book with more pictures than you probably ever wanted to see of us, and flyers and stickers and posters and pins, all that stuff's in the book. It's out of control.
It's really cool looking too. I mean, and Skull Grinder's in there. That's in there.
Yeah, I get the whole thing in there.
Yeah, and that book looks really cool, and it comes in a neat box. Yeah, it's like a big present.
It is. Like I said, this is the kind of thing that I would want to buy, that I would expect from, like AC/DC or something like that. I'm like, oh my God, this is my band or our band? This is like too much, And, I felt like a little kid at Christmas or something. So, yeah, it's insane. I mean, we definitely wanted to make an effort to put things in there that no one's heard, because one thing I don't like is when bands put out this big thing and like you already have all their stuff, but there's like 2 new songs. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you got to buy this box set that's to get 2 new songs or whatever. So we definitely did not want to take that route. That's something we've always frowned upon, because a lot of people already have all the albums. Mm-hmm. We don't want to cheat them by making them buy stuff they don't need. So not only the book, but the recordings, we wanted to make it really special and unique and hopefully mind-blowing. But, there's stuff in there that not only no one has heard before, but we hadn't heard before until right before we sent it off to the label. Like, Danny found these rehearsal tapes from 91 and 92 that I didn't know existed, and if I'd heard them, it was maybe once right after we recorded them, and they actually sound pretty good. And, a bunch of live stuff from the last year or two that actually sounds pretty good that I know nobody's heard, and some weird, obscure things, and, the book, of course. So, we definitely wanted to make a point to make it something worthwhile and not some, cash in, like, hey, people like our bands, they're going to buy it.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of cool stuff. And so there's like, demos, or like you said, practice sessions and stuff like that. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, and then a song that some people have heard, but not too many. We did one song under the pseudonym Grave Violators for our friend Dennis Dredd's compilation album a couple years ago. He wanted Autopsy to be on it. We're like, well, we're kind of under contract, but we'll call ourselves something else and we can give you a song. And so we did that, and that's on there.
Oh, cool.
And just all sorts of things. And, of course, 2 of the discs are stuff that everyone's probably heard before from Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the band. But, that's, I guess, kind of important to a box set, sort of a well-rounded overview of everything we've done. But, again, we wanted to make sure there's lots of special treats and things like that in there that are, hopefully going to make it, a unique thing.
It looks very unique. It looks cool. Even the packaging is cool. And, with this release and all this stuff you're doing at the end of this year, are you going to be, like, busy as all get out next year as far as touring and stuff like that?
No, that's, number one, touring killed the bands, okay? So
Yeah.
we haven't gone on a proper tour since '93. And as you pointed out, we are adults now, unfortunately. We were legal adults back then, but not mental adults. But now, like most of us have kids and, sort of responsibilities and all that, so we can't just be like, hey, see you in a couple months.
Yeah, no.
So, and honestly, even if we could do that, I don't know who in the band would want to do that. I know I don't.
Right.
I really don't ever want to tour again. It's not something that interests me in the slightest. It would be more of a job than something I enjoy. And the minute this band feels like a job, it's over.
Right.
It's not a career, but having said that, we do travel and play shows here and there if it's something that interests us. The cool thing is, because this band is not a career, we can pick and choose what we want to do, not have to be on the road year after year, which, if you play death metal, let's face it, that's the only way you're going to make a living out of it, is if you're not in the studio, you're on the road. And there's, a very short list of bands that can actually pull that off. And as much credit as I give to those bands, that's not us, so we kind of play what and where we want. Right now, we're playing the Netherlands Death Fest in February, and guess what? That's it.
Well, that's kind of cool, because this is the first year they're having that, and that's the same dudes that did the Maryland Death Fest. So what did they do? Talk you into that too?
They didn't have to talk to us. We've played the Maryland Fest a couple times with Autopsy and Absat, so right there, that's like 4 times working with them. And they did the West Coast version over here, the California Death Fest, and we played that, and that was cool. And then they said, hey, we're taking over where Neurotic Death Fest quit, which is in Tilburg, Holland, and we played Neurotic Death Fest a couple of years ago. And once again, we know and like and trust the Maryland guys, so when they said they were doing the Holland thing, and asked us to play, we said, oh yeah, man, let's do it. They always treat us right, so there's no reason to not do it. And Holland's cool, it's a fun place, and the crowds are always really good. So, it's going to be fun. And I'm not saying we won't play more shows next year, but that's the only one that's booked right now. We don't do a lot, we play here and there. The most shows we've ever played in 1 year was 11 shows, and I think that was like 2011 or maybe 12. That was kind of a busy year, but we try not to bite off more than we can chew.
So if anybody wants to see Autopsy live, they're going to have to go to that Death Fest in the Netherlands in February.
Yeah, it's just a hop, skip, jumping away.
So book your flights now.
Yeah, right? So we'll see, I suspect we'll pop up in a couple other places as the year progresses, but that's all we have confirmed right now, so we'll see what happens.
But you got a lot released. Like you got the box set coming out, you got the Skull Grinder album that just released, so people can get plenty of you anyways.
Oh yeah, we're out there, we're not that hard to find.
So if people want to learn more about the band, or if you're going on another tour that's a surprise, that's not just the one in the Netherlands, what sites do you have that people could go to find all this stuff out?
Well, like everyone else these days, there's a Facebook page, an Autopsy. I don't know the actual address of it, because it's like Autopsy Official and like 20 numbers after it, which no one's going to know or memorize anything. But, if you just search for Autopsy Official on there, I'm sure it'll come up, and, it's the only legit one out there, so it's not too hard to track down. And then we've got the official website, the, autopsydeathmetal.com. There's that. So, we're not that elusive nowadays with the internet. Everyone can pretty much find everyone. And
if people want to order like the box set and all that kind of stuff, is there a link from your Facebook page, or do they just go to like the Peaceville Records page? Yeah,
you got to get that stuff from Peaceville. We sell like T-shirts and things like that, but as far as actual music, like records and all that, our label does all that for us, which is nice.
All right, well, Chris, I'm going to let you get going, but thank you for taking the time out to do this interview with us here tonight, and best of luck at that Holland Festival thing you're going to.
No, cool. Yeah, it's going to be a good time, and, real cool talking to you, and thank you so much. It was definitely fun, and I hope we get to do it again.